little frightening in cyber zone. Okay. But as I was saying, it's been a difficult week for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. And we are going to discuss some of the difficulties surrounding uh, the tragedy in Meron, but we're going to do it through the lens of the Zohar and some of the other great sages of Jewish history. And I originally called this class the Symbiosis of Good and Evil, symbiosis being a fancy word for one system feeding another, one element in a system giving life to another so that it can give its life back to the other. And the figure eight is the most graphic, simple image, whereas you see that each line of the circle in a figure eight is feeding into the other. And in Greek numerology, the figure eight on its side is called an omega, which is also a symbol for eternity. And of course, this is another image that teaches us about the relationship between heaven and earth. That heaven gives us life force. We transform that life force into the service of the Creator, and so that the life force He gives us goes back to Him, and then He gets new life force and it comes back to us. Of course, God has infinite life force, but it's a system that is fed by our actions here. So the idea of symbiosis is this relationship of giving and receiving back and forth. Of course, a healthy marriage is a good example of that as well. That each member gives and receives to the other, and the system is sustained in a healthy, oftentimes beautiful way. But when we talk about death, we often relate to death as being a very sad thing. Obviously, there are many people suffering now because of what happened last week. And we are not here to investigate other people's feelings or opinions or conspiratorial thinking or even the facts of the case on the ground of what happened in Meron. We are using this time and this teaching to elevate ourselves and our understanding. And throughout the Torah, we have many of these cases where things happen that look terrible, and they were actually became good, or they were already good, and we just didn't see how. But before I go into the actual class, let's light a little little candle for all the 45 souls that went to heaven, and this should be for their light and our memory of them. And when we light candles for those who have passed away, they know about it up there, because in our daily Patreon class, Torah Kaf Bet of Likuti Moran says at the end in the Hashmatot, the pieces of Torah that Rabbi Natan added to the text, he says, the Rebbe said clearly, heaven and hell are here on earth. Okay, and the sages say there's only 4 fingers, a tefach, between this world and the next world. So that's not much. It's not out in space somewhere. It's actually deep within reality, behind the physical curtains. And when we talk about the world to come, we're talking about that curtain being lifted. It's not somewhere else. It's here. It's just at a different plane of existence. Now, how do you get to that plane? Well, one of the ways is through meditation and prayer, and something that we try to work on a lot here and elsewhere in our service. And the essential idea is that when you leave your body, you're not leaving you, you're leaving the physical carrier of your soul. And then your soul is set free from the body and can travel and go places. But where's it going? When we're talking about going, we're talking about going in. Rabbi Kaplan, alav shalom, he used the phrase inner space. And that is a good term for understanding it. I like to think of it, if you had a microscope and you looked at your finger, you would see, the more powerful the microscope, the deeper you would see into the structure of you. But you wouldn't notice you anymore after you left your skin. You wouldn't notice your difference between your red blood cells and anybody else's. And if you went deeper and deeper and deeper, much smaller and smaller, eventually the physical realm stops, and there's a ma'avar, a passage into the non-physical plane, which is pure idea, pure thought that has no physical mass to be measured. Okay, now with all that said, remember we're going to talk about and learn a piece of Zohar that seems to teach us through remez about what happened in Meron last week. Now, when I say through remez, it's not going to be a direct prophecy. So one of the things I hope that we all can benefit through this class tonight is understanding the different levels of the divine inspiration of our sages. Because no two people are on the same level at the same time. It's actually impossible. And every person is a filter, a channel, a lens for God's light. But each one, depending on his clarity, his purity, the level of work, the number of vessels that he's developed, will determine his ability to receive the light of infinite knowledge. Because remember, by Hashem, it's all one movie, all happening at once. There is no past and present and future in the world of God. We live necessarily in that world of separation for the sake of the creation of free choice. Now, okay, so we're going to talk about some basic Torah examples of these concepts. Then we're going to learn the Idra Rabbah, Parshat Naso. If you have it, or you want to look it up, or you want to drag it from Sefaria, you can. It's tough. Kuf Mem Dalet Amud Bet 144. And so we're going to look at that Zohar. We're not going to look at it like we're kids looking for a message. We're going to look at it, and this is kind of an interesting idea, is if you are an algorithm, your mind works like an algorithm. There's a reason why, and cybernetics teaches that the human brain is a model for computer operation and computer programming. And so what we're going to see is that the way an algorithm works, it takes words, concepts, or ideas and relate and finds them elsewhere where the same words appear. So it's like putting word puzzles back together. So we're just going to look through the text, and we'll see things, and you'll understand as we go more and more. Okay, so first of all, this idea of the symbiosis of good and evil, which is also death and life, or death and joy, happiness and sadness. The classic example, of course, is when Rabbi Akiva, who was one of the 10 martyrs who were murdered by the Romans, Rabbi Akiva was smiling when he was up on the pyre being burnt alive in a very brutal and cruel way. I'm not going to go into the details, but he was smiling. And his students who were standing there asked him, how could you be smiling at a time like this? He says, because all my life I prayed to die, Kiddush Hashem, and now it's happening. Shouldn't I be happy? But how could that be that a man is on fire and he's happy and not screaming with agony? Well, because we know that if the soul, the neshama part of a person has become his total garment, his whole spiritual being, then the neshama cancels out the body's ability to feel pain. The neshama cancels out the emotions that are connected with ego and pain. So neshama is pure attachment to God. So it cancels out pain. It's like, how does there be people, in circuses do kind of certain things. I remember a story about a guy who could put a needle through his arm and not feel anything. And they even explain it. Non-Jews as well can do this. They explain that when they're totally attached to their spirits, whatever name they give it, doesn't really matter. When they're totally attached to the spirit, they don't feel pain. So that idea, keep in mind. Rabbi Nachman, 1800 years later, was sitting on a hillside while his town was burning, and his own house was burning, and his possessions were burning, and he was fine. He was calm and in a good mood. And the Talmidim asked him afterwards, Rebbe, how could you sit up on the hill while the rest of the town is burning and all your life work is burning? They did save a lot of his writings. He said, because I know that everything is from God and everything is good. So he didn't have the pain of the loss. He was totally attached to the will of God. And when you're at that level of neshama, of attachment to the will of God, you don't have the pain of personal interest. Then there's the famous story, I'm sure you've heard of, many of you. I believe it was the Gur Hasidim were marched into one of the gas chambers, and they started dancing and singing. And the Nazis were so astounded by these Hasidic Jews that they ended up letting them live and taking them out of the chamber. But how could they go into their deaths dancing and singing? Because they knew they were going up to God in the highest, fastest, purest way. Again, they weren't attached to the physical idea of things. There was LSD research done in Switzerland after World War II. There's a famous book about it. I believe it's called Katsetnik, with a number. You can look it up. It's a good read. Basically, they were just experimenting with LSD at the time, and they gave it to Holocaust survivors, and they all just had these amazing visions of their relatives dancing with God's name in heaven and with utter joy. So these are people that died in the Holocaust that were dancing with God's name with joy. Again, a separation. Of course, that's another whole thing, because these beings were not in their bodies whatsoever. You see our candle. Okay. Then there's an idea that's expressed, very simple words. Rabbi Nachman teaches, Yesh inyan shakol litapech letova. There is an inyan. Now, when a rabbi or a chacham uses the word inyan, an inyan means like a subject, but it's not just a subject. It's more like an inyan. It's like something we know has happened experientially. We've dealt with this before. It's an inyan. It's an inyan that a hatan is happy on his wedding night. It's an inyan that when two rabbis get together, they talk Torah. It's like a foregone conclusion. So he says there's an inyan that everything will turn to good. Now, he doesn't say when, the world to come, the future world, after the revival of the dead. He doesn't give that tag, but it's an idea. It's an inyan, meaning things will look bad on the outside, but God has an agenda for turning it good. How, when, where, with whom? Those are questions that we really have a hard time answering until we experience it ourselves in our own lives. And then, and when I got to where I live in Bat Ayin, it's out in the territories, and as they're called, they told me, out here people get makot she'enena makot, and that literally means they get hit, but they're not really hits. It's like shadow boxing. That things look bad and they still turn good, and I've seen it so many times. It's ludicrous to even go over details so much. Okay, so all those examples are just to introduce this story from the Idra. It's in Parshat Naso, as I said, and this story was written in this book, the Idra, which was later placed in the general Zohar corpus of teachings after Rabbi Shimon passed away. But when he was alive, it was written down. And so we're talking about not a past tense. We're reading it now, past tense, but in the story, it's not really past tense. It happened while they were alive in their bodies. Amar Rabbi Shimon. So Rabbi Shimon said, Tavachna arahu hagir hartzan mare de sare. It's a very fancy language. Remember, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was 13 years in a cave, and Eliyahu Navi came to him twice a day to learn, teach him. So he says, we're missing that. Hagir is like a person who is limps or walks funny, could be bent over. And hartzan is like usually like the seeds of a grape. Mare de sare, and he has long wild hair, which Eliyahu Navi was described as that, and I believe it's because he was a Nazir, where they don't cut their hair. Why is not found in the Beit Idra? The Beit Idra literally means the house of the gathering. Now, there are ruins in the north, on the road between Tzfat and Meron, where the Idrot and many other caves and burial sites are located, where this Idra stands. And it was a place where Rabbi Shimon and his students would gather to learn, and it was a place where Eliyahu would visit them. So, when you get used to being visited by Eliyahu Navi, then you wonder where he is. Why hasn't he come? Idra din bezimna ditkalia milini la in kadishim, because at this gathering we're going to reveal super upper holy words, and it's fitting that he's here. And immediately, of course, Eliyahu shows up. And 3 shining sparks were on his face. Now, what does that mean? The text doesn't tell us. The commentators just say they just translate it. But I believe it means that certain sparks on Eliyahu's face. Okay, you could say his face is always going to be lit up. He's a soul that traverses heaven and earth and time and space. So you'd think his face is going to be pretty bright. But these sparks, I believe, are also there because of his mission. Well, we'll see more. Right, he came. Amar le Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon said to Eliyahu, "My tama lo shachiach mor b'karduta galifa de mareim beyom de hilula." Why is the master not come for this event where we're going to, engrave, so to speak, these holy new words of at our hilula, at our celebration of joy? Now, the word hilula nowadays is used almost exclusively in the Sephardi world for a yortzeit, in the Yiddish term, right, for the day marking the passing of a tzaddik. Like Lag BaOmer is called the Hilula, the celebration of joy of Rabbi Shimon. but also marks the day of his passing. But it also, in the ancient Mishnah language, it was used also for a wedding or a bar mitzvah or any big party that someone would throw would be called a hilulah. Okay, but so Rabbi Shimon's asking him, why weren't you at the party? Okay, Amarle. So he said to him, Chayecha Rebbe, by your life, Rebbe. You see, Eliyahu Hanavi is calling Rabbi Shimon Rebbe. That's a big deal. Shama Yomin it beriru, excuse me, Sheva Yamin. It beriru kameku chabrichu koli nun the yetun ishtachuni me. You should know that 7 days God was choosing the people that would be there at that gathering. And he's telling him, in other words, if I wasn't there, well, there's a reason that I wasn't there, but God had already chosen who would be there. So that's also teaching us that when things happen, it doesn't mean that they're just happening instantaneously, but rather that, well, maybe Hashem is thinking ahead. Maybe Hashem can do that, Do we ascribe forethought to God? Of course we do. So Eliyahu was telling him, these people that are going to be in this gathering have been invited there. Adlo altun idra dilachon, and those that would come or not come to your idra, your gathering. Uba'in lashkacha zimin kashir ketfoy va'ana chavena ziminim ketaman va'ena kamed ishkacha zimin taman. Right, and we wanted to come, and but I had a special responsibility. He uses this interesting language, tied to my shoulder. Now, what, when you give somebody a mission, or deliver this letter, he wouldn't probably call it tying it to his shoulder. But when we find out the mission that Eliyahu had, maybe there's something significant here. This responsibility. The reason he's giving for why he wasn't able to make the Hilulah of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Second mentioning of Hilulah of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And because it had this responsibility attached to my shoulder, I couldn't come. Because that very day, the Holy One, blessed be He, sent me on a mission to do a miracle for Rav Hamnuna Saba, who was buried in a cave right across from Rabbi Shimon's cave, and they were colleagues. They were both on the level of having constant miracles done for them and his students. So Eliyahu was telling him, I had to go do some miracles for these great rabbis. I see we have some chats. Hopefully I'll get to those. Okay. Because Rabbi Hamnuna Saba and his students were captured by the Romans and put into prison. But it doesn't say any prison. It says the Armon of the king, the king's palace. In other words, the Romans were occupying Eretz Israel, and they had structures that they used for their administration of their power, which is very interesting. If you notice, governments are always building buildings, right? Because buildings are a symbol of power. And of course, they're very useful if you want to hold people against their will. So they were in this Armon of the king. It's Rachishna Lum Nisa. We did a miracle for him. The Ramena Lahu Kotala, that we knocked over a wall. The Hechala Damalka, of the palace of the king, which would be the Caesar. Now remember, the Caesar, of course, was in Rome, but he always had one person assigned as the ruler of Judea. Okay, now they're calling him here the king. Now, it could be that king, but it doesn't say a Roman legionnaire. It doesn't say the general, the consul of the Caesar. It says a king. The wall of the king. Keep these phrases in mind. With Katru Katroi, and they were buried under boulders. They were buried. They were crushed. The mitu arba'im v'hamisha, and 45 ministers, pardashke. I looked it up just to check it. It could mean minister or policeman. Interesting. Were killed when Eliyahu went in and knocked that wall over. I had a feeling, an image like he gave the wall his shoulder. That's why he said it was it was tied to his shoulder. I don't know. Well, maybe that's because I played football. And then I took out Rav Hamnuna and his students. Ramenu lon the bikat ono, and I lifted them up. Olichna is in the parentheses, which means basically he did another miracle for them and flew them out of there where this event had taken place. Vezimna kamayhu nahama namaya lo achlush salat yamim, and they were brought, water and bread was brought before them because they hadn't eaten for 3 days while in captivity. And all those days I did not leave them. So Eliyahu is giving a very nice, clear story about what happened and where he was and what he was doing and why he wasn't at the Hilula of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And we see 45 ministers were killed. And Kad Tavna, Eshkanan Baparsa Denat Lukoli Nun Samchin. And they came to a place where they found it's called a samchin, but it turns out to be a carriage of angels in the translation. See, so the Zohar is not going to give you language like that. The translator will. In other words, and what happened? Tlat min chavraya Allah. Well, how do we know it was a transport of angels? Because there was an angel holding this, I want to call it a raft, but it obviously wasn't like that, but it was something that 3 of Rabbi Hamnuna's students were lifted up to heaven. In other words, they died after all these other things had happened. And we asked them, they said, they asked, well, why did these 3 rabbis die right after this miracle was done to save them? What's the point of saving them if they're just going to go back up to heaven? And they said, this is the portion of Hashem from the Hilula of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Zaka'ah ant, Rabbi Shimon. Meritorious are you, Rabbi Shimon. Zaka'ah hulkan be'inun havraya, and so too is meritorious is the portion of your students, the yatvin kamach, that are sitting before you. Kamadargin itkanu lahon la'almadate. How many great levels have you acquired for the world to come? And how many flaming torches will be brought to you of light, brought for you of light there? Okay, and that's the basic end of the story. So I trust that as I gave that over, I made it clear enough, some of the remezim, some of the allusions in that story that seemed to somehow reverberate from what happened in Meron. Of course, these were 45 Roman ministers. we had 45 holy Jews. The three rabbis who went up, who were they? We don't see that necessarily in the story. But over and over, it keeps mentioning the Halul of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And it's not a wedding. The commentator of the Mitok Midvash of Daniel Frisch says it was called the wedding because of the revelation of new Torah teachings is like the joy of a wedding. The excitement of something new coming into the world, a new couple, or hear new words of the secrets of Torah that have never been revealed before. But let's step back. Okay. A friend of mine, my neighbor a few doors down 14 years ago, was murdered in the forest. And we found in Likutei Moharan, in the 38th Torah, a few paragraphs down, entire paragraph. Now, in that paragraph, it's talking about a great rabbi, and Rabbi Nachman is using that, a piece of Talmud, to teach us another teaching. And in the paragraph, he says that 16 sharpened swords passed over this rabbi's body. My friend Erez Lebanon had 16 knife wounds in him. It says later in the paragraph, it mentions Bat Ayin, the place it happened. It also mentions his name. Erez Lebanon is a nickname that the Talmud gives. It means literally, of course, the cedar of Lebanon, which was the wood of choice of the day that they used to build King David's house. And of course, cedars of Lebanon is a famous phrase. It's also used, some cedars were obviously used in the Beit HaMikdash. So all those facts, those details appeared at the same time in the Likutei Moharan, as these details were kind of surrounding this terrible event that happened here. So what was it? It wasn't a direct communication, God telling the prophet what's going to happen. But Rabbi Nachman said those words 200 years ago, and in his Torah. But it turns out that all those details came up in this story here. So what's happening? What's happening in the story of the Idra Rabbah, which was spoken like 1800 years ago and written into the book of the Zohar 1800 years ago. And then last week we have this new story. And again, we have these parallel details. Okay. Well, remember what I said. No two people have the same level of divine inspiration, Ruach HaKodesh, or prophecy. Every single person is on a different level, so every person's revelation is going to be different. Whether it's Rabbi Nachman in 1800s or Rabbi Shimon in the year 300, I just learned in the Kabbalist Baruch, I missed that point. Okay. A time lag. Okay, Rhonda, that's one way to explain it. What one way of understanding it is that, remember, we live in time, we live in place and space, but this information is not coming from time and place and space. It's coming from above these categories of reality that we deal with all the time. It's coming from a unified place where all the information is one because God is one and his mind is one and his view of reality is one. And so the information is passing from the level of one to the level of infinity, infinite locations, infinite times, infinite spaces, infinite people. I mean, of course, not infinite people, but let's figure if there's 7 billions on the planet today, how many there have been over the last 6,000 years. It's an interesting statistic. I don't know if they've ever generated an estimation of that. Maybe someone has run across that number. Probably you could Google it. How many people have lived on the planet since the beginning? A lot more than 7 billion. Okay, but the point is that the information is released into the world and each person picks up what they do because of their own particular level. And that's why when Shaul Hanavi went to visit Shmuel HaMelech, when King Saul went to visit Shmuel, the prophet, right? Get my Hebrew, I'm speaking Hebrewish now. It's getting late. The minute that Shaul got close to Shmuel, it says the text in the Tanakh says he fell down on the ground and started prophesying. It doesn't tell us what he said, meaning that there's no necessary reason to write down what the king was saying there when he fell into prophecy. What it's teaching us, though, is that there was a wave of spiritual power coming down to Shmuel and his students, and he got hit by the wave. Okay, and he picked up whatever he could pick up, and it knocked him straight on the ground. And many times when the Meraglim gave over their bad report about Eretz Israel, Moshe and Aaron hit the deck. They went straight to the ground because of the power of the negative speech. Okay, but let's not go to the negative. The point is this phenomenon that we're talking about here has many, many layers. And this piece of Idra is not a direct prophecy of what happened, but it is a pickup, so to speak, of pieces of the information. And if we choose to, which we're all free individuals to choose, we can say, wow, there's something there. Or we can say, no, don't connect too many dots. You're pushing, you're stretching the envelope. I don't know if that works. Most envelopes don't stretch, right? You're pushing out the envelope too far. Or as my friends used to say, you're reaching. But the point is that, and this is the thing that we have to really grasp that connects to what we talked about earlier. These three rabbis that were lifted up to heaven, they were going to Rabbi Shimon's Hilula. They weren't sad to leave one party here on earth to go to a party in heaven. The people that are sad are the people who are left behind. But if you notice people's language after these events, someone was saying today, oh, I feel so bad for them. They died. Of course, they died in a very unpleasant way. No question about that. And there was great suffering, and no, let's not even go there. It lasted as long as the suffering lasted, and then it was over. But they were going to the Hilula of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And, you know, Rabbi Avraham Levi, who was a great rabbi and student of the Arizal in that generation, 500 almost 500 years ago, he was punished for saying Nahum, which is what we say in a fast day, asking God for forgiveness. He was punished for saying that at Rabbi Shimon's Hilula. In other words, on a day of joy, you don't introduce sadness. On Shabbat, I could not go up the hill to daven at the kever of Rabbi Shimon because I knew I would start crying and I would be sad. Now, of course, there's happy crying in prayer with longing and desire and enthusiasm of a very high level. That's fine. But, I knew personally that I couldn't go up there the day after these people had died there and act normal like a Shabbat would require me to act. So I stayed in our camp and I prayed there and it was everything was fine. Afterwards, we went back up to the mountain when it wasn't Shabbat because we don't mix the sadness and the joy. The joy is the joy. The challenge is for us to attach ourselves to the joy, even in the midst of this horrendous thing, to attach ourselves to the joy because that's where they are. We're the ones that are sad, and of course the families are sad too. But if you were visited by a dead relative and they told you how happy they were to be out of their body and into heaven, you might feel a little different. And that's happened to people. People are visited by dead loved ones. People that are suffering in a body. I worked in a hospice. There was one guy there who was in 17 years. He had not moved from his bed. You know what that is, suffering? 17 years. And he wasn't in coma, where in coma, it's not the same level as being awake and unable to do anything, lying in bed. Now, wouldn't you rather just get it over with? Push a button and leave? Of course you would. So when we talk about death and we talk about tragedy and we talk about these painful events, we need to open the lens super wide. We need to really see the big picture and not the blame picture, not the conspiratorial picture, and none of this kind of stuff. We need to see the bigger picture of what is going on with those souls and to embrace their joy, because they're in joy. When I'm feeling pain, I'm not feeling their pain. I'm feeling my pain, my loss. But it's not really about me. So that's a little bit selfish. My pain, my loss. What's that? Okay, if you're a mother, you're a father, you're a brother, you're a best friend, okay, we understand it's a little different. There's more pain, there's more connection, there's more loss. But let's be honest, it's not about the dead. The dead are happy. The dead are in a place of complete expansion. Your body is a constriction of your soul. The first thing that happens when you leave your body is like, whoa, that's heavy. I don't want to carry that thing around anymore. And by the way, you can't experience that in meditation. So those are just some words that I thought would help, the ideas I've been working on for a while, because, I was, trying to look at this Zohar. They're not talking about anybody being sad over there. Of course, it was the Roman ministers or policemen, whoever they were. They're the ones who got crushed, and not the sweet, young, beautiful Jews over there in Meron. Now, on a further out note, if we want to really go out into left field, we don't know who those souls were and where they came from and why they were chosen. But a friend of mine did have a dream the night after, on Shabbos night, the night after the event. And in the dream, he saw a hand come down out of the sky. It's a dream, right? It's like a cartoon, right? Whatever you want to think. The hand came down, and the hand was picking some people and putting them on one side of the room, and picking up people and placing them on the other side of the room. Which I think the shot of that dream is that God is choosing what he's doing. He knows what he's doing way ahead of time. Way ahead of time. Here, Eliyahu says God was choosing the guests of the Idra 7 days in advance. That's not much time in God's calendar. So I took it more like a spiritual challenge. Can I be in joy and sadness? Can I feel the pain and still be in joy? And that's each person's choice, to try to go there. But Rabbi Nachman does teach, and it's a statement from the rabbis, from the sages, that ein yisurim ela b'dat, that all the suffering we feel is only depending on our consciousness. If we have expanded consciousness, I should say it this way, the more expanded your consciousness, the less pain you feel. Now, when the students of Rabbi Nachman went to him and said, Rabbi, how can you be here on the hillside watching the fire? And he said, well, because I understand this is all from Hashem. But he added on, I could not be down there where everybody's screaming and crying and running in chaos because of the fire, because my mood and it is not attuned to their mood, and my feelings are not where their feelings are. And so there is a level of sensitivity and appropriateness that is also being addressed here. That if you go to a Shiva call, you don't go in smiling and talking about how great it is to die. It's kind of absurd, right? But in your heart, you can. If you're there, you can't fake it either. But I think with this Meron tragedy, which is a week ago tonight, maybe right now as we were speaking, I remember, I think, the reason I didn't go up to the site, I was going to go visit the Nar Shalom tent, which happened to be exactly over the Zaka emergency treatment facility in Meron. And I was headed right there, and I had to teach my class on Lighthouse. So the Lighthouse protected me from going up and seeing the horrible sights that people saw up there that night. And I know a lot of people are traumatized because they saw bodies and they saw dead people, and it wasn't nice. And so I feel like God protected me from that, because I don't like to see things like that. Anyways, so I hope this piece of Zohar teaches us something, and I hope that we can kind of see it the way they saw it. Nobody seems to be mourning these 3 rabbis that were taken up. They asked why, and they said because they're being taken to the Hulula. Wouldn't that be nice if after you pass away, someone asks, why did they take him? Well, he's going to Rabbi Shimon's yeshiva. He's got to go back to, he's got to be on time for Seder. Would you be sad if you knew that the soul was going to such a great place? No, I wouldn't be sad. It would be nice to know it, right? That people were visited by their lost ones, their lost loved ones, and they said, don't cry for me. I'm fine. I'm on the road. I'm on the high road here. I'm going up to Rabbi Shimon's Halula in heaven. Wouldn't that make the parents feel better? Now, there's a letter circulating around the internet from Mrs. Sue Koltai, I believe is her name. I'm sure you can find it. It's all over WhatsApp. And she writes a beautiful thing. Her son was lost in the event, and he was taken up obviously to Rabbi Shimon and the Hilula there, and she writes about it in a very beautiful way. And I'm sure you could do a search and find it. If not, I can send it to the Lighthouse, and I'm sure people at the Lighthouse have it. They probably got it before I did, but you can get it if you want. It's worth reading because it's from a mother who lost her child. But did she lose her child? Maybe Rabbi Shimon gained a student. So it's really an exercise. We have some time. We've got 9 chats. Oh, I'm behind my work here. Let's see what we have. Well, this seems like is that it? Seems like it. Well, well, Rhonda writes, today a teacher shares that when asking her students what they learned, every single one of them said something different. And she said this happens every time she does this. Well, that's interesting. What do you want to share about that, Rhonda? That everybody has a different vessel, correct? Perhaps. Okay. Are portions for Hashem like Maaser? You could say that. It's a little stretching the language. A 10th portion of your money, a 10th portion of your crop or your flock. It's God's portion. Portion, I guess, is just a nicer word in English than maaser, but okay, it works. The words of the tzaddik are always true, that's for sure. On these levels of Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Nachman and Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Hanun Nasaba, there's no question. I just learned the Kabbalist Baruch Thaler's weekly Wednesday night Zoom that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wrote in Zohar predicting that 45 people would die in Meron and Lag Bomer. Okay, that's one way of interpreting it as a prediction of the 45. Seems kind of clear, but they weren't the same characters in the drama, obviously. But does, of course, that again is levushim, garments. We don't know who those souls were. Okay. Now, other people are arguing against it around the yeshiva world. I've talked to other people there saying, no, it's not the same. But you know what? It's not an argument worth arguing. Okay. Roman guards, right. There's a question. Some call them ministers, some call them policemen. I guess depends on how much, what their pay grade was. if you make a lot of money, you're called the minister. If you're on a minimum wage, you're called the cop. I don't know. Hey, folks, my friends, listen. Where are we on time? We are, well, we have a little more time if people feel up to meditating. I have a certain meditation that I've done before for things like this. I just don't want it to be, I don't want the class to turn too heavy. But the meditation is one where we kind of hypothetically project a loss. Now that sounds like that's pretty dark, Avraham. We don't want to do that, But before I got married, a Kabbalist told me, and he said, and I was a rookie, in learning at the time. Maybe I'm still a rookie. It's okay. He told me, okay, now that you found your wife and you're going to get married and you're going to receive this great gift from Hashem, let it go. Let it go. I said, what do you mean, let it go? He says the way that you most spiritually receive a gift is if you're not attached to the gift. If you're attached to your gift, that means I still have an ego involvement. Whereas if you receive a gift like your other half, and you're able to understand that it's just a gift from Hashem and it's not yours, and you don't own it or possess it or control it, then you're receiving it properly. You know, you ever see at a birthday party, they hand out presents to all the kids. And the minute the kid gets a gift, he grabs it and he holds it tight, and no one's going to get it. No one's going to touch it. No one's going to play with his gift because it's his. You know, that's okay if you're 4 years old, 6 years old. But, you know, as adults, I think that we're expected to have transcended a few of those levels. So the meditation, maybe give me some feedback, folks, if you want to try to do such a meditation. It's a guided meditation, as we've done before. We could save it for another time as well. Or we could do something else. Usually I just, you know, I have many meditations that I've done over the years, so I Hashem sends me what's appropriate. But I have this feeling that might be too heavy for tonight's class. Anybody want to weigh in on that? Because we can do other meditations. There's many to do. Many, endless. Okay. 5 new messages. Okay. How do I do that? I guess we do it this way. Something light, please. Yeah, I felt that too. Rhonda. Okay, let's do something different. But it's a very important discipline to be able to obtain. But and you can keep this in your notebook, you know, that the true way of receiving God's gift is to let it go. You're not letting go of the marriage, you're letting go of your attachment to it and allowing it just to be a gift. Okay, so let's take a break, a minute or two, relax, do what we have to do. Excuse me. Okay. So everyone, let's try to get comfortable. And to begin, comfort, we have to let our bodies release their tension. And begin to breathe consciously, slowly, smoothly, effortlessly. Receiving air, an endless gift. Letting it go, no longer ours. Each breath through your nose cools your mind and your lungs and your heart. Each exhalation removes impurities from the lungs, from the blood, and from our thoughts. Before you is a great screen, pure, unblemished. Anything that flies through, we let it go. Any emotions that come within, we let them go. Emotions have no power over the mind unless the mind is unaware. Feel the gift of smooth, easy breath, never to be taken for granted. On the pure screen of your mind, imagine a dance floor, an empty dance floor, except there's a ring of candles. To your right and to your left, extends many candles in a circle, a broad circle around you. To your left is a baby, but looking closer, you see that baby. You even know it. It is you. Picture of you when you were a baby. Next to the baby is a small child. It looks at you. You look at him or her, and she smiles at you. And next to her is a young woman in her teens. And you look close and you see that it's also you. And further around the circle is a mature woman in her 20s, or a man, and you see them and you know them. That's me. And he or she smiles back at you. Now, one man is a person who is closer to your age, maybe only a few years younger, depending on how old you are. And that person is also smiling at you. Why are all these people smiling at me? Why do I even ask? Perhaps more important, am I smiling at them? Are you happy to see you at the stages of your life? Can you find happiness there in each of those faces? Now you see a picture next to the last one, exactly where you are today. The same height, build. You see yourself as you are today. And next to that person is an older person, more middle-aged. Perhaps their faces have changed, their hair, their clothes. You look closer and you see, wow, that's me, getting older. And next to them is an even older person who you recognize as you, but it's getting harder to recognize. The face is perhaps smaller, shrunken, wrinkles, colors changed. The hair is gray. And you ask yourself, is that me in the future? Truly old. Perhaps not so erect, not so standing tall, perhaps tired. Maybe our skin has fallen a bit. Are we still smiling? And now all of these people in your circle are going to reach out and hold hands. And they're surrounded by candles, beautiful yellow candles. And all these people grasp each other's hands, each hand a little different, more aged or more young. And then we begin to turn in a circle, holding hands. And the circle begins to turn faster and faster. Around and around you go. All these different versions of you turning, dancing, holding on to each other. Now everyone is smiling and laughing as they run in the circle. And then we come to a pause. And each of the people in your circle come together closely, very closely. And you hold out your arms. And your arms are miraculously long. And you reach around all those people. And you embrace them. And hold them. And pull them close to you. All those different people are you. You pull them together closely. You can feel each other squeezing. But there's so much love. So much love for all of those people who were, who are, and who will be. Okay. Turn to our breathing, slow and easy. Perhaps more grateful to be ourselves when we see who and how many people we really have been. Okay, so I think it's a very effective meditation for expanding our self-image, for remembering we've not always been who we are today, and we will also not always be who we are today. is to have appreciation for that. Appreciating who we are might sound simple, but it's not always so simple. So may we all be blessed to see the many facets of ourselves and to see that we're all one. And it's not a contradiction. For just as our Creator is one, so are we one. Okay. Well, that was pretty light, right? I think it was
Light is a relative term.
Cindy said light. It is true. It is relative. So next week we will be approaching Shavuot. So I hope to have a class ready for Shavuot. Cindy writes, Susan, maybe as there is no past or future in God's timeline. Well, Ariel, where are you? You're at a guns don't kill people do. You're at a Second Amendment group. I know. You can tell us. Well, we should all be blessed with a holy, happy, peaceful Shabbos.
Amen.
And hopefully we can embrace the things that have happened and understand that our pain is our pain and not really project that onto others and to take responsibility for it and to turn that pain to joy, because that's what we do. That's what being Jewish is, because we are here to transcend here. And may God show us the way. Shabbat shalom to everyone, and we'll see you next week.
You too.